So I think I'll just kind of get us going, primarily because I want to save. We have some special guests, and I'd like to save, at least 30 minutes there, at the end for our cool guests to talk about real stuff. So let me just do some logistics. So thanks for coming to, I think, what is it, like the ninth monthly, Datum community huddle. We have a couple of upcoming sessions to wrap out the year, October 8th, November 12th. You can put it on your calendar if you're so inclined. I'm sure we'll give you a way to subscribe at some point soon, right, Kaylee? But October 8th will be kind of our last one before we have super exciting for us launch week, where we're actually going to let people use some of our stuff in the wild. We also have some things going on here in New York City. So recently, we took over a new office at 120 Broadway. Anybody's coming through New York, needs to park for a couple days, have a meeting, hang out, want to say hello, please do so. It's not too far from our other stomping ground down at 29 Broadway, but we got more space here. So please don't be a stranger. And then we're planning to extend what was a super popular alt cloud meetup that we did last spring around bringing together new service providers to work on hard problems that they're all kind of struggling with or their businesses. And we aim to have one on October 22nd here in New York, probably at Kaylee, do we decide is going to be here at 120 or?
It is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. On the
10th
floor.
Awesome. And then another in November. Lastly, if you like holiday parties or end of year celebrations or whatnot, we're planning an info party December 10th. We usually get a pretty good showing. Jacob and I have been doing this on and off for about 15 years. We took a little break last year to just catch our breath, but TBD on the location. But we've been looking at some great spots. It might have something to do with great music as well. Okay, so save the dates. Today's agenda, we got a bunch. We have some great new people. Some of you may know, but I'll let them introduce as they go. Kaylee's going to talk about website. We launched a new one. We've got some things. We have some goals there. Scott's going to go through our enhancements. Other Zach Smith is going to go through some Kubernetes bets we've been making. And then we've got a roundup of tech bets that the team will go through. And then we're going to save the last half of the meeting, like I mentioned, for Sheng here from Obot. Did I say it correctly?
Yes.
Sheng? Okay. You have to tell us what that means. And Papi from AGNTCY. So we're going to do a little bit of a conversation on MCP and the state of things. Yeah. So with that, I'm going to shut up and let Kaylee do the do.
Cool. Thanks. Like Zach said, we have a lot to get to today, so I will try to keep this section short and sweet. We have made some pretty significant progress around our visual brand development and have made quite a few updates to the website. But of course, it doesn't stop there. So we're always continuing to make improvements. Most notably, we're really going to focus on this next sprint around the integrated developer experience. So docs, roadmap, changelog, but also really kind of nailing in how we communicate things that are really important to us as an organization. So like our company handbook, the wait list and getting, like a newsletter sign up and making that available to people is going to be a priority. So keep an eye out and I guess watch this space.
Any fun things about launching? By the way, we did front all of this by Datum. Yeah. What did you learn?
Oh, learned a lot. So we have quite a few improvements that we're going to have to work through between, team communications, doing the do. But, overall, I'd say for our first kind of big push, it went really well. So I'm really proud of the team.
Yeah, so that's great. Kaylee shipped the first production app on Datum's Edge Cloud. Awesome. All right. Thanks, Kaylee. And give us feedback. There's great ways to do so. Really important for us to have public and accessible content. It's kind of a challenge these days, in terms of all the different ways that content could get slurped up by AI and turned into stuff. And we're really trying to lean into transparency here. So this is an important first step for us. Scott, you want to do the enhancements?
Sure. Yes, we've made some pretty good progress over the last month, and we do have a official MCP server now available with the CLI tool, so you can do all the AI stuff with Cloud Code. I've actually used it yesterday to help Kaylee push our public site live. But it's really cool that you can discover all Datum Cloud resources and just kind of learn how to work with it and propose how you might solve some problem. So definitely recommend checking that out. Also made some improvements to our Datum Cloud portal, so you can now see telemetry data from all of our edge proxies in real time, instead of having to export it out to Grafana Cloud. Still need to do that if you want in-depth telemetry, but at least you can see the basics. And Zach will cover this in a bit more detail in the next slide, but we did successfully launch virtualized projects, significantly reducing overhead on project creation, making it creation instantaneous, and also improve platform scalability. We're working through the next round of enhancements to our edge proxy, looking to bring authentication, firewall, AI capabilities to Datum's edge, and really making that a fully featured proxy and not just, a dumb reverse proxy. And then we're still kicking the tires with Milo, trying to make it a rock solid foundation for service providers, making sure it can actually scale to meet their needs. And then there's a lot of other work that's upcoming in the next few months. The really exciting stuff around Datum tunnels. Josh is going to talk about that in a little bit. Leveraging Iroh, Quick, and Mask to tunnel connections between servers and systems. We're also looking to enhance Milo's workflow engine so we can declaratively define business logic instead of having to hard code it in code. I, as much as anyone, hate hard coding.
Statements.
Really
Just a
excited
whole
about
bunch
that.
of if statements, man.
Yeah. If statements literally everywhere. And then really just starting to keep down the track of go-to-market and operationalization, getting telemetry data around resource consumption in the platform in a really well-defined way, and then piping that to metering systems like Amberflow, Stripe, whatever you want, so that way you can actually charge consumers.
Yep, very cool. Okay, great. Thanks, Scott. I mean, a lot going on here, and we are doing a little bit of cleanup of some of our enhancements in our repos, but it's a work in progress. So please feel free to have a look, comment, etc. Everything is out there in the GitHubs. So, Mr. Zach Smith, would you like to take the mic?
Sure. Hope everyone's doing well. Yeah, so as Scott mentioned, we are working on some things to make virtual control planes basically free. We're not quite there yet, but we have delivered a big chunk of our initial effort to reduce that overhead. We've seen some pretty good results. Hopefully we can release some benchmarks here soon. We want to scale to tens of thousands of projects, if not hundreds of thousands or millions. And with that, you can't have overhead of 2 GB of RAM and CPU for every project. And so that's where we're focusing our efforts on virtualized projects or virtualized control planes. Like I said, landed the initial kind of V1 there, looking at how do we help shard this or load balance this when there's a lot of them. Along with that, we've contributed some efforts upstream. They have not yet landed, but they are in progress to also help us reconcile resources across those API servers efficiently. So yeah, really excited about the work that we're doing on the K8s front. As you know, our platform is primarily based on K8s and very pluggable and ecosystem friendly. And so yeah, hopefully we have more fun scalability efforts over the next couple of months. That's it for me.
Yeah, it's great. And for those, I know there's a lot of Kubernetes expertise, decades, isn't it? At least, don't apply for the Kubernetes job unless you have 20 years of experience at it, right? But we have a lot of experience on this call around this. So, what we're trying to do here is stay true to kind of our tech bet around the Kubernetes API ecosystem. And it's working. It's actually developed some really great things for us. But we got to make it super cheap to scale and run, right? So it's like massively multi-tenant in our way. So this is great. Thank you, Zach, so much for working on this. And if anybody wants to chat, just go on the community Slack. And I'm sure Zach would like to get your ideas or feedback. Okay. Now we go to the round table. You guys are still seeing, I had to move out of full screen mode because I couldn't see everybody. So hopefully you guys can still see this. So Josh, right? Oh, sorry. No, Wolfgang.
Yeah. So I'll do a quick update around this. I tried to keep it brief. We did have a deep dive and demo and stuff of this in the last community huddle. So if you're interested and haven't been there, there's a recording of that. But essentially, what the outcome of that was, there was one big piece missing around the MVP, which was the control plane for the traffic, which we call the Galactic router. You can find that on GitHub now. That is the last piece to have the MVP feature complete. So this is right now running in our production worker cluster, Kate's cluster. And yeah, it's ready for integration further upstream in our stack with the network services operator and stuff like that. So there's another slide there, I think. So yeah, sorry, quickly here. So around these, the components, everything that starts with Galactic here, you can find on GitHub. And on the next slide, the big piece that we're still bringing here is going to be installation and architectural documentation. So we have it working internally. We have it installed with our Ansible tooling and so on. But in order for somebody else to make use of it, it'll need a little bit more there. And there's some minor code cleanups, but those are not really relevant to functionality. So yeah, those are the last pieces on the MVP side for this.
Great. What Wolfgang's been tackling here is like kind of super critical. You'll see it here in a second of the tech bets that Josh is making related to tunnels. We really want to give people the ability to spin up their own virtualized backbones, basically, that they can then have work wherever their infrastructure needs to be, and then connect into third parties or other connections. So this is super foundational for us. It's good and hard work. So now we've got an MVP. Now time to make it real. So we'll be updating docs and getting it so that if anybody does want to test and play around, we'll hopefully make that a lot easier in the coming weeks. So Josh, you want to piece it together?
Yeah, just to call out, there's a bit of chatter in the Zoom chat about what's visible on the screen right now. It's sort of split screen between you and the slides, so
really
hard to read.
How's that? Better?
You're still on the screen. I think it's going to be a Zoom setting.
Oh. There?
Perfect.
Oh my goodness gracious. So
right.
many buttons.
All right.
Okay, so, sorry about that.
Yeah. Just to recap what Zach just said, Galactic VPCs, the idea is that it's just a big logical network, backbone that you get to control, goes across globe, things like that. But you need to be able to get data in and out of it. And so that's really where these tunnels come into play. So this is a slide that's really taken from the community call back in March, where we talked about, some ideas on that, those on-ramps and off-ramps, whether that be like WireGuard or IPsec or anything like that. So as part of a project that we wanted to work on, which is a reverse tunnel proxy, you think of like, I want to expose a service that's on my local network, outside of my local network, for someone to be able to look at. Started doing a research around this area a bit more. So you can go to the next slide quick. So this shows sort of, the typical high-level flow of how this might work. You have an agent running somewhere that could be a CLI tool, just whatever it might be. It connects into a platform, and then that platform can then make requests into the agent to services that are behind it. And that's really the main goal there, is to expose something that's local outside of your local environment. So go to the next slide.
It wouldn't be fair if we didn't say in a zero trust principle manner.
Yeah, you want to throw all these other niceties on it, right? Yeah.
Well, I know, but Manish is already itching. If he doesn't say zero trust in an hour,
or at least once.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the traditional approach that really saw looking into this was the agent would establish a tunnel or a connection with the platform, and that platform would need to route all incoming requests through that single connection. And that produces quite a few challenges, not only from a platform orchestration side, we need to instruct all the nodes how to reach that endpoint, but also performance concerns. So if you have a single, say, TCP connection open between that agent and the tunnel, you're going to get headline blocking issues. Congestion is going to impact everything going over that, and the performance is going to suffer from it. So if you go to the next slide, one of the technologies that we came across, I think Zach and Jacob and Tom were talking about it back in April, was a library called Iroh. Iroh is as a Rust library. I think it originally started out as like an IPFS replacement, but they really pivoted and focused on simply facilitating quick connections. So quick is really think of an alternative to like TCP. It's a UDP-based protocol that leverages TLS. You can send both lossy and non-lossy sort of datagrams or stream-based protocols through it. It also allows for multiplexing. So a single UDP connection or single quick connection, you can have logically tens of thousands of streams within it. Those streams can individually decide if they can be lossy or if they need delivery guarantees. There's congestion control over all that. With Quick, because TLS is involved, there's the ability to leverage MTLS, so you can have that zero trust nicety that Manish is all about. So with Iroh, one of the things that was really appealing was the idea of being able to dial a peer and negotiate a connection either directly or through a relay. And there's various discovery mechanisms that Iroh supports. Default is DNS. I really recommend going and checking out the dumb pipe tool. That's really what we did a POC with originally, exposing an HTTP Connect endpoint on that we are able to wire the gateway up to essentially tunnel in through the agent to a backend service. The really powerful thing about this is once the agent informs the control plane, where it exists, and dialing information, things like that Iroh really provides, that can be propagated across the platform, and each service that needs to connect to that agent can negotiate a direct connection with it. It doesn't need to be established ahead of time. It doesn't need to route through or funnel through any particular node on the platform to get there. But the relay can be used for the data path if it can't establish a direct connection. That's where Iroh's NAT hole punching features really come into play, similar to what you see with Tailscale. So if we go to the next slide.
Can I add one piece of color commentary here for the peanut gallery, which is what I learned about this that is super fascinating, and we'll probably have Brendan on here to come talk about it. He's based here in Brooklyn and came by, and he calls it, what does he call it? IPv7?
Yeah.
So it's just like, this is like 5G, 6G, 7G. This is like IPv6, Tom. You didn't realize we're not done yet. We have IPv7. And what was interesting is the way he described it was basically routing based upon certificates instead of IPs. And so everything here is a certificate connection. So what's really like blew my mind was the ability to embed like an AI agent or an application that could only actually talk to something else on the other side from a packet level standpoint, right? Which we feel that there's just this really, really big need, like whether you solve it through deterministic routing or more controls or more private connections, the ability to define what you're allowed to connect to and what you're not in a kind of a trustless manner is like super, super interesting to me. So did I explain it kind of correctly? Like, did you understand the same way, Josh?
Yeah, so their big concept is every peer has a public-private key, elliptic curve base, and you publish that public key into really a discovery system. And when a peer wants to connect to you, it essentially looks up that public key in the discovery system, which returns node addresses, either direct or the relay server that peer is associated with, and then goes and establishes a connection. By default, it's just if you have the public key and you can find the address, you can dial it and connect. But that's where MTLS and CA signed trust and everything that come into play.
Super interesting. All right, I'll let you continue.
Yeah, so as we were really digging into and validating Iroh and specifically Quick, trying to understand it better, came across the Mask IETF working group. This is definitely what all the new kids on the block are leveraging, I would say. High level is Mask is a suite of protocols for tunneling traffic through a quick connection. And so it's really based on HTTP connect semantics. So if you do I have in bold here, the connect protocol or the connect sort of handshake, that's going to indicate to the receiving server that you want to connect to some TCP address. And then there's standards for connecting to UDP and IP tunneling. And then also there's some in draft for even Ethernet. So you can think of really Mask as a suite of standards-based protocols that are starting to be incorporated into operating systems. Like MDM software can enforce that connections to certain endpoints go through a Mask relay server. There's really interesting things around Mask relay servers as well. Yeah, it's Cloudflare Warp and Cisco Secure Access and all these other really VPN or SASE type solutions are starting to leverage this because of the multiplexing and non-blocking, like the removal of headline blocking issues from the tunnel. Instead of setting up WireGuard tunnels or IPsec, things like that, connect in through a quick tunnel and get into Galactic VPC and maybe off the other side.
Hopefully with some good controls about where and how you do that, right?
Right. Yeah. And Iroh has apparently an enormous amount of telemetry that I haven't even started to look into yet. So that'll be good to see too. Go to the next slide.
Yep.
Yeah. So jumping to a completely different topic. Scott
Back to regular HTTP land.
Scott mentioned we're going to be expanding some features on the Edge proxy. Today, we do expose the Gateway API resources to projects and then our own HTTP proxy type. Underneath it, we're actually using Envoy Gateway and a fleet of Envoy proxies to serve those. And so after a discussion a couple of weeks ago, we decided that we want to expose the alpha APIs that Envoy Gateway maintains that bring a lot of other functionality to those proxies around, load balancing be really important, health checks, rate limiting, client, downstream authentication, whether that's JWT or OIDC based, basic auth, and then even upstream TLS authentication, other types of authentication. So that'll be coming out, let's say, pretty soon. We'll be expanding the HTTP proxy types that we have to still give a path for defining these things in a single resource versus needing to create resources that reference each other and try and map that in your head. And then we'll also be exposing like a gRPC proxy and maybe some other as well. And I think that's all I got. It was good timing. There's leaf blowers that are about to come. So.
Nice. Thank you, Josh. This is super exciting. Just to kind of flatter Tom here, I think like in my head, what we're doing right now, one of the first services you'll see from Datum at our public launch is basically a distributed Envoy Edge. In my mind, this is like an analogy to what Fastly did with VCL in the delivery side. We're trying to do that for basically folks who leverage or have integrated Envoy or similar kind of Kubernetes ingress and gateway, technology. And we think we can deliver that out way at the edge and at really nice scale. So we're excited about that. Hopefully it makes it really, really easy for folks to kind of move forward and consume and see this as an extension of their infrastructure versus a separate infrastructure. Nobody knew how to use VCL, Tom? I remember how to use VCL. I was just like I copied and pasted a few things from some threads.
I mean, your onboarding guide generally should not consist of like, learn this weird arcane programming, sequential programming language. Like doesn't help people get on the platform quickly.
Cool. Okay, Josh, do you want to do a tech bet, or I can, or I think Brett was going to do our tech bet on AI Gateway, and I know we have a lot of
I'll talk about it a little bit, Zach, and then you can jump in, or Josh, if you want. We've made a large investment in Envoy's proxy, and we're seeing features come out of that. It's pretty exciting. As an extension of that, sort of the next piece of it that makes logical sense to deploy, and I think is really going to be key to helping us out, is the Envoy's AI Gateway. It's a project that's pretty early on, but we're seeing a lot of good traction from it, recognizing that this is a space that's moving very quickly. I think Agency and Obot a little bit here will tell us more about how quickly this space is moving, but I think this will be a good win for us. We'll bring a low latency edge for the AI interface with this, policy-based controls for routing and security. We'll make this something that's very scalable for folks on a global level, and do AI native security at the edge with this, with the zero trust enforcement. It's really a pretty cloud neutral platform. There are tons of folks that have already done integration work, even though it's fairly early on with the Envoy AI Gateway. So it'll enable a real
0.3 or something, right?
What's that?
It's like 0.3 right now, I think.
0.3 for whatever that's worth. There's no whole numbers in there yet, or not yet. Pretty close, but I think it might live in the 0 dot for a little while space, but really giving you consistent policy enforcement across environments, and really providing a foundation for agentic AI applications to be built, deployed, and to be controlled a little bit through a global edge and gateway for this. So I think it'll be a nice addition to the platform for us.
So this is going to pop out as like a separate feature. However, I'll just add one point here. We're making a bet right now because we're pretty close and leveraging Envoy pretty significantly. But, true to Datum's thesis, we believe that there's just a ton of innovation happening, both with service providers and open source projects around this. And so I'm really excited to learn what's going on broader in the MCP landscape here in a minute. But we want to make this an open platform. And so we're going to start here. We think this is a great reference implementation. We may, support other technologies or allow people to build services that we can connect and plumb into our Datum Edge plus related services, right? So that's kind of the fun part. It's also the challenging part. At some point, if you want to make a service that people can actually use, you got to make some bets. So this is what we're working off of now. Thanks, Brett. If anybody's participating in the working group for Envoy AI Gateway, let us know. We're trying to get ourselves involved. Henry, your turn. We're almost done.
All right, everybody. So this is, I guess, a segue into MCP. So at Datum, we have built an MCP server that allows us to turn chats into connections. So this actually solves some really interesting problems. You no longer need 20 to 40 years of experience in this space in order to understand, what every part of this system is doing at the edge. And also it speeds things up. If you had 20 to 40 years experience, you still need to go through the YAML files, manually wire everything together. So we think that AI can help drive this so that everybody can set up a connection through chats. But what can go wrong right here? So if you vibe code yourself your way through this, you might end up with a very bad connection. So we thought about Datum MCP, which offers you a safe, consistent way of doing things because we're presenting you with the tools. Your AI agent can discover those tools and through your intent, give you the correct connection. So here on screen, it might be very small to see, but we're using Claw here as a demonstration for a very simple example of just establishing an HTTP proxy to datum.net. The system discovers the right tool, reads the correct HTTP proxy templates, and from there it fills in all the required specs and deploys it, activates it. And in return, we get these auto-generated host names, which just works like magic. So this is kind of like the current state of things. we expect to have more capabilities for our MCP, and will, of course, grow with the AI and MCP technologies in the near future. So this will only get better and safer for everybody to use. With that, I'll pass it back to Zach.
Awesome. Thank you, Henry. I mean, this is exciting for us, and one of the main reasons we made a tech bet, number one, on being an open company, and number two, on leveraging, really, really well understood standards like Kubernetes APIs, because we want to make sure that these interfaces can interact, with a high amount of confidence against our platform. So this is a great example, Henry. And I did another one recently where I asked, Claude to build me an app based upon Milo, and using the kind of Kubernetes CRD patterns, and it did a pretty good job of at least speccing it for me. So it's exciting to see some of that come to reality. Let's make it easier so that we don't have to all learn what quick and mask protocols are, right? All right. With that in mind, I think Manish, you're going to help introduce some awesome guests we have here and talk to the experts, right?
Now that we've you've set it up nicely for MCP and agents, so we welcome Papi Menon. Welcome,
guys,
Papi.
mind I turn off my screen share for a second?
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Welcome, Papi. Thank you.
Manish.
Thank you for joining. Papi comes from Cisco Outshift. He's the CPO over there, and is leading the agency project. And then we welcome Sheng, who is from Obot.ai. Sheng has been hosting a MCP developers summit also. Sheng and I think Obot have been hosting that. So I really would love to hear their hot takes on MCP A2A and what's happening in that space and what's next. So perhaps we can quickly start off with Papi. Maybe you can give us a quick background on agency and the recent developments around the donation to
WLF.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I'll start with a quick intro. Papi Menon. I lead product management, product design, and business development for Outshift. Outshift is Cisco's incubator group. So the charter here is for us to look at the landscape of emerging technologies and discover meaningful business opportunities for Cisco. And with that, it's kind of a broad charter, as you can imagine. So within that, we've focused on two areas that are adjacent to the Cisco core business and present meaningful opportunities. So one is agentic AI. That's what Manish and I have had conversations about in the past, and that's what we've built a collective called AGNTCY that's now part of the Linux Foundation, et cetera. So that's one piece. The other is quantum networking and cryptography. So those are kind of the two big areas that we are focused on. Yeah, I'll stop there. Over to you, Sheng.
Yeah, Sheng, please.
Yeah, hi, I'm Sheng Liang. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO of a startup called Obot.ai. And we've been working with, developing agents, custom agents, chatbots, and probably in the last 6 months is when we really got focused on MCP.
Cool. Yeah, I had a chance to get a demo of the Obot product, right, for enterprise MCP, where what really is something that the community is looking for, and that's where I kind of want to focus on this evolution is identity, right, and authorization and authentication, right? So perhaps if you guys can tell us a little bit of the state of the art from agency and MCP's perspective, and what I know there's several things within the agency standard that provide these frameworks, right? So for agent discovery and identification and agent manifests and stuff. So
yeah, let me take a quick pass at that, and I love the preamble there. The backstory of all this is, when you talk about identity and authorization and trust, we are very clearly seeing through the conversations we've been having with customers and the more tech forward companies that we've been speaking to, the design partnerships that we've been pursuing, even the partners we have in the collective, in the agency collective, we are seeing that trust is the biggest hurdle to enterprise adoption of agents, as you can imagine. No, that's kind of a no-brainer there. And when it comes down to it, it is making sure that the agents are who they say they are and that they're doing what they claim to do, right? Like, so all of the things that we're building are kind of tied into that. And when we look at the life cycle of so we talk about the Internet of Agents, right? So what we are building towards is a world where agents can autonomously collaborate and communicate to solve problems, right? Like, so that's everything that we're building in agency is towards that goal. So we talk about multi-agent systems.
Right.
We acknowledge that this is probably a little ahead of the curve for where most people are today, but we are seeing those early innovators get there now, where we are seeing multi-agent systems, 10 to 20 agents. We have those ourselves, by the way, working internally within Cisco and within Outshift. So we are starting to see the edges of these problems already become real for a lot of people who are working at that edge. So we see the life cycle of a multi-agent system kind of in 4 distinct cycles. So it's the discovery piece, which is how do you discover what agents are out there and what are pertinent to the problem you're trying to solve? How do you compose them into a multi-agent system? How do you deploy them onto your infrastructure? And then how do you evaluate them? How do you observe them, monitor them, and all of that? So I'll stop there and turn it over to Sheng so I can talk about the different components that we've built within agency to address each of the different steps in this life cycle. Identity is a big piece of that. We're getting a fair bit of traction there. We've been talking with identity providers. Internally, of course, we have Duo, which is part of Cisco. We've been talking to them. And I can talk about that, but I'll turn it over to Sheng to...
go ahead, Sheng.
Yeah, Manish, if you don't mind, can I'd like to just share
a
couple of just 2 slides real quickly, just to maybe help frame the conversation and the big picture. So really a little bit more high level. I mean, I think matches very well with all what we're all talking about here. So first, as I was telling you that, I mean, we've been doing enterprise AI as a little startup for probably like close to 3 years now. It's been surprisingly long. And as a startup, we just especially in the beginning, we just have to do whatever we do. So we did a lot of consulting. So the good side of that is we get to understand a lot about the industry. So I want to start with the MCP use cases. So I think probably the top use case everyone understands is, you go to Claude Desktop and you can bring up connectors and these interactive chatbots that could be extended with MCP, right? You can ask MCP, what emails I've received, or can you configure the network for me, that kind of stuff. So then this is probably realistically where the industry is today. And then second, as I go on, it gets more and more advanced. The custom agents, these are, there used to be some companies that just develop like Composios of the world. I don't know if you've heard about them. Zapier, Zapier, sorry, just like they just do a lot of connectors. And a lot of these connectors are kind of used to build custom workflows and agents. And obviously now they're all positioning these things as MCP. So that's kind of the next. This is more developer focused. I think it's happening a little slower than the first thing, mainly because the developers in some sense don't really care, because I mean, if they have something already working, they are not under no urgency to change. And the thing that's propelling MCP forward is because all the vendors are now onto MCP. So if you use MCP, you don't need to develop the connectors yourself. So that's kind of that's going to happen. And the third one is even further ahead. And this is like, if you talk to MCP fanatics, they'll say, MCP is the protocol for everything, which is kind of also true. You can literally build anything as MCP. You don't just have to build connectors, but you can build the whole agent. And there's some good reasons on why you want to do that. And then once you have agents themselves as MCP. They basically are using MCP as an agent framework. If you look at the MCP specs, I mean, most of the stuff right now that's being designed actually has very little to do with basic connector functionality anymore. It's really more like an agent framework. So that's why like A to A, it essentially is also MCP to MCP. So it's almost those protocols are a bit redundant. So if MCP really takes off, then that could really be an agent framework. So the fourth one, I'm sure you, hopefully some of you guys have heard about this. I'm really interested in this. Is the more recent, MCP UI development, and that's kind of taking a bit of the MCP industry by storm. It's a very simple idea. The AI space has been, we all know, transitioning to a chat interface, but chat is pretty restricted. So with MCP UI, you can literally bring, highly interactive experience into chat. So and essentially, and you're not like we've known for a while, like things like artifacts and canvas have been very useful, but those are really custom made. But essentially MCP UI let any app developer build their own like canvas, and it could be dynamically loaded into any chatbot. So in that case, like the chatbot really kind of becomes more like a browser. And MCPs, once you connect to an MCP, then the MCP specific UI comes up, and it's very cool. So then that kind of becomes a primary chat app interface. So there's a lot of work going on here. So all these kind of drives our, this is my second slide, this last slide, I'll be quick. So drive some of the best practices stuff that we're seeing. And it kind of roughly falls down to build, discover, secure, and use. And so you'll find a lot of these very familiar. And in some ways, it also drives our product, our technology and open source product development. So I just start with build real quickly. There's still a lot of confusion, discussions about how to build MCP. Is it like one-to-one low-level API mapping versus more high-level, MCP? I think the world is starting from direct API mapping, but definitely moving to more high-level actions, because it doesn't really make sense, say, to directly expose thousands of Microsoft Outlook API as the Office MCP. I mean, you want high level, like then MCP in that case is really indistinguishable from agents. But in terms of development, it's really not. If once you figure that out, so basically building MCP in some sense is really not very different from building agents if you want to build them well. But in terms of SDKs and hosting, it's not a big deal. I actually, companies like Cloudflare has been trying to move pretty aggressively on this. I mean, I think there's a chance that MCPs and agents, because right now there are two ways these things can go. They can go the way of web apps, or they can go on the way of CDN. So I mean, you guys are network people, so I think there's probably a great deal of interest on your side to eventually these agents and MCPs become more like CDN, so you can have a play in it. So that's it's going to be really cool. And then the second thing is discover. It's basically all about the catalog and constrain the user, things like that. The third one, security, authentication. I mean, that's honestly been, like I totally agree. It's been one of the big technical problems, but it's also getting solved. And in some sense, these things are also getting a bit ahead of the market, because these things could get very complicated. And the key is just to get people to deploy it and work things out along the way. And then last, not actually, using MCP is still being quite a bit of a challenge, simply because the support, everyone claims support for MCP, but they're not really the same. Some tools have very little support for MCP, like OpenAI. Some probably like, I mean, even Claude Desktop, that's always been the flagship, don't really support the entire MCP spec. So a lot of these new technologies, it just doesn't work, like MCP UI. So we've actually got a lot of business just building our, like, we never thought we are going to get into this, but we built, you know, our own MCP client. That's been the most complete, most compatible MCP client.
Yeah.
And we get a lot of business because of that. So anyway, so that's a very high overview of my perspective. I mean, hopefully it's
yeah, I mean, that's great. Yeah, and the standards for MCP are obviously evolving from very fast, right? And then bringing back, you know, the agent workflows into the conversation. Papi, how I think a lot of the state of the art today for agents is it about executing, you know, using MCP or working with, you know, MCP to execute some of their tasks, right? Like we have seen internally for our BI workflows, we've been leveraging some of these AI tools called Julius.ai, which will talk to MCP servers, right? So essentially.
Yeah. No, I think MCP solves a very clear and present problem for agentic app developers, right? Like it enables tool calling across a multitude of different services. It enables function calling. It enables even agent calling. So you know, there's a reason it's taken off to the extent that it has. And yeah, so I think what we are focused on with agency is at least taking that next class of problems, right? Like, okay, so you're using MCP. How do you do that in a way that's secure and performant? How do you do that in a way that is enabled across agents that are running in different platforms that you don't have access to? You know, how do you enable them to exchange state and context? How do you enable semantic, you know, exchange and collaboration between agents that don't necessarily share the platform on which they were built or the framework, right? So those are the problems that we are looking at. I just want to touch on something that Zachary asked in the chat.
Yeah.
This is a question I get a lot, which is like, hey, we already have authorization, authentication models that are fairly mature. We have it for microservices, you know, distributed architectures, et cetera. Why do we need it? Why do we need something new? Why do we need to reinvent something for identity for agents, right? And the reason it is necessary is because of the nature of agents, right? Agents are autonomous entities. They can act on behalf of someone. You know, they are agents for a principal, if you will, for a human. And their behavior can be different depending on which principal they're acting on behalf of. And they're dynamic and polymorphic, right? Like they can have different. They're non-deterministic, one first and foremost. They're based on large language models, and therefore their behavior is not deterministic, and they can be doing different things in different contexts. All of that is there. I just linked the blog post where we talked about some of the high-level challenges that you have with existing auth models and identity models when you layer on these complexities, which is why we need to think about it in terms of who is the agent? What is the identity of the agent?
Right.
Who is it acting on behalf of? Who's the principal on behalf of whom it is acting? And what is the task that it is trying to accomplish? All of this tuple, all of these data points together will then determine what is an appropriate level of access, right? And all of that needs to be, I noticed that.
Yeah, I think that's something that we've discovered, you know, about like how agents authorizations are fundamentally different from human or user or client or service. You know, they should be task based is one point of view, right? And that applies to MCP too. Instead of authorizing tools individually, you go for tasks, right? So you define a task for an agent and you authorize that agent for a short duration. Here's zero trust here, right? A very short duration or short-lived authorization for that agent, which is fundamentally different from how people have done authorizations in the past, right?
Correct.
And then that brings...
That actually poses a thing that I wanted to ask a question on, if you don't mind.
Yeah. I'm
really
going to open it up. Yeah, please.
Which is like, how is this different than like an API gateway and using like a consumer token, you know, to get authorization, you know, access on an API, right? It seems to me that there's some unique set of problems and challenges here. And I'm kind of curious, like, what are those, and those are being worked on, and like B, the other one is like the implication with, I'm going to call it end user enterprise customers, traditional ways of, security perimeters, or even, inspection or firewalling. We have this problem right now, Papi and Sheng, which is like, we're trying to introduce, a pretty high scale free tier. And for most of my career, I've spent all the time trying to keep the bots away and filter them out. And now I'm like, wait, aren't we supposed to give them away? Like, so that Henry's little example can result in a sign up and a use in a case that actually worked. So I'm kind of curious how you're seeing this be, a different paradigm, and why the community, or what's the community aspect that you're starting to understand as the common problem sets that need to be solved.
Sheng, you want to go first?
No, you go ahead.
So much to talk about there, right? Like, so completely agree with you. I think one of the things that we recognize is when it comes to enterprise adoption, whatever we build with identity needs to layer onto the existing security principles that people have. It can be something that, so what we are doing is working with identity providers like Duo, like Okta. We are talking to them and making sure that the tokens they generate, the granular tokens, like you said, that there are mechanisms in place today, but they fall apart in certain cases, right? Like we said, because of the fact that an agent is not like an API, right? An API has a deterministic behavior. It has a deterministic data set that it accesses. And, and there's this predictable outcome every time you talk to it. It does not change depending on who's calling it, or or what task it is trying to accomplish. These problems uniquely appear with agents, right? And particularly agent to agent communication. When you're talking about a multi-agentic system, how the authorization and permissions flow through that multi-agentic system, gets fairly complicated, and there's a lot of nitty-gritty details that need to be worked out, right? Like, so, but we are starting from, to your point, there are existing tools in our enterprise toolkit that solve various aspects of this problem, like API gateways. That's one thing. Like tokens, that's another. And so we are layering onto that, right? Like taking what we can reuse from that while making sure that the new surfaces that are opened up by agentic behavior is covered adequately. So that's a very high level view of it. And there's more stuff, by the way. I dropped the GitHub thing. There's going to be more and more stuff landing on there. So if you're interested, please check it out and follow along. But
no, I think I agree, Papi. That's a really good summarization. And Zach, to be honest, we're doing, I mean, we're more like approaching it from top down, looking at what, because we're not starting as a security vendor or auth vendor, but to be honest, the like you saw the best practices and stuff like that. And we do have a product called Obot MCP Gateway, which is very much into authentication and access control. But that customers, that's a very early market. Customers who can kind of appreciate that are still few and far between. Most of them are still talking about building and using and cataloging. So the market is very early. That's number one. Number two is the as far as I know, we really haven't invented any like everything's built on OAuth, by the way. So we haven't really need to invent any new OAuth standard or protocol. So what I've observed is the MCP stuff, because there's just like Papi was saying, it's you have to do it on behalf of something else. It does push the envelope a little bit. So it's just very confusing, and customers don't want to think about this. So there's probably room. I still believe there's room for products, and we're building one, but it's a very early market.
Right. Yeah. And related to that, like if you're kind of working with existing enterprise, obviously they're infrastructure and long set of complicated environments. You can't just be like, hey, you should replace all that, right? No, you're just adding to it, which really makes a ton of sense. Do you see things like observability or kind of audit logging, or like what happened? Obviously this is a little bit different. You say like with a REST API, you're looking for an error maybe, and like maybe you're putting it into Splunk and trying to find out like later for recorded. This is like pretty different territory, right? Because you're even just trying to observe what the heck's happening in some cases. Is that kind of
this is You're teeing up everything perfectly for me. Like it's like
I didn't read it
I'm
actually
like
before.
did I send over all the questions I want to be asked? Great question. That's exactly what we are focused on. In fact, just yesterday we have the Splunk.conf, the big conference is happening right now, and we just announced the new OTel standards that Splunk and agency are working on together, because again, observing multi-agentic systems presents some unique challenges, right? Like again, because of all the nature of agents and their behavior that we talked about, but there are certain commonalities around OTel. So just like you mentioned, OpenTelemetry has certain standards where you can emit metrics in a way that can be consumed by Splunk. So we just announced that partnership with Splunk and agency where we are going to be putting out metrics in the standard way. It will be absorbed into Splunk. It will show up in your standard dashboards, etc. So I'll drop a link there. Yeah, exactly. There you go.
Yeah.
That
And
just
so you're
came
doing
out.
that as part of like an extension of OTel.
Exactly. So we are very active in OTel, obviously, with Splunk and all of that, and we're continuing to extend that for agentic.
Cool. Hey, thanks. Yeah, so we don't have a lot of time left. We haven't covered enforcement, obviously, and I think that's something that security enforcement, all the peculiar problems with AI systems. Whether it's prompt
I could go
injection,
for hours just on
I
that
know,
topic.
but yeah, I know. So we
might need a whole nother session.
We need another session, exactly.
If you guys can stay for a few minutes, we can ask the broader group if anybody wants to come off.
Questions, yeah, if there's.
I do have to drop, unfortunately, at 10. But Manish, if you have questions, you can always, ping me.
I can send
where to
them
find
to
me.
Yeah, and anybody has questions, 30 seconds, probably we can ask them. But I guess we're really out of time, unless Sheng, you wanna?
We can queue up a round 2, is what we can do.
Yeah, I'll be happy to come back, show the the whole landscape and technology in a lot more detail. It's really quite exciting what's happening. Speaking of observability, one quick thing I want to add was just we people have been doing log analysis and stuff forever, and a big part of that is from the low level logs, figuring out what the intention is and what's really going wrong. But what I've seen with AI logging is a little different. Like it's less about the low level API calls, but more about the chat, the context, the whole chat, and that kind of has the intention and everything built into it immediately, right? So it's just a lot better.
Like a giant trace.
Thanks, Papi.
Like a full text giant trace.
Yeah, it's really cool. So anyway, I mean, we can go very deep in this. I could kind of show you, some examples, some product demos and stuff. I mean, it's like MCP UI. It's just it could literally be like almost like I feel like if chatbot is like Web 1.0, I mean, that's kind of like Web 2.0 kind of version of chatbot. So you could imagine there's just so many things happening with MCP.
Oh, very interesting.
Yeah, but we'd love to keep the conversation going. I'd be happy to come back another time and show you guys a lot more
how
detail.
fast.
And by the way, like
moving, right?
if anyone's in Europe or easy to get to, UK, I know a lot of you probably on the East Coast. There's a MCP summit we're holding, I think, very close to Anthropic. All the Anthropic people will be there, Microsoft, Amazon, and it's really where the steering committee come together and talk about where the whole thing is going. It's open to public, so be like a few hundred of the leading MCP experts. I think it's October 2nd in London. So
okay,
cool.
So MCP Summit is the new KubeCon of 2000.
Dev Summit. It's called.
MCP Dev Summit is the new KubeCon of 2016.
2016, I think they say they're going to turn into something called MCP Con. So it's going to be because this year is like Dev Summit. It's more developer focused. Right. Next year it's there's enough like end user interest. Hopefully it'll be like more like KubeCon.
Right. Cool. MCon. Sheng, we will definitely take you up on the offer to come back. We'd love to see more about what you guys are building and what you're seeing. And really excited by this, but appreciate you coming, sharing some of this. It's really nice to see your face, and I hope that next time I get out to the Valley, we'll stop by and say hello.
Have fun. All right.
Okay.
Great. See you soon. Thank you, Sheng.
Talking to you.
Well,
Okay,
team,
bye-bye.
we're gonna sign off here. Thank you, Sheng.
Send me,
Appreciate you
Sorry.
guys for staying late today. We'll post the recording and also some of the links from the chat here because there was some really good stuff on our community channel. And hope to see you again in 1 month from now.
And just one last thing. If you have questions, you can post them in the Datum community channel. We can send them out to Sheng and Papi to answer if you have.
Thank you.
Happy Wednesday.
Bye.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye, team.